Everyone, come see how good I look.
You guys, this episode, we said last episode was crazy, but this one right here.
This year's good. This year's right to the top.
Now, this was probably the best episode so far. Episode 6, Hunters in the Dark. We start off in the 80s. Hayes and Amelia, they just did the deed
They did the deed
for the first time.
Yeah, in the previous episode, they show how right after the Woodard incident where he has the shootout, Hayes goes to the hospital, then Amelia meets him there, and they go back, and you see the start of them going into sex, and then this episode picks up going into sex.
Going into sex. The start of them going into the sex.
Into the intercourse. This is Sexual Education 101.
But yes, that's what they did. And so now this is after the fact. They're talking, and she asks if he's hurt, and he says that was the first time he fired his weapon on the job. And one line that I took from this that you kind of alluded to was he's like, I really don't spend time remembering stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like he almost makes a choice not to remember things, and she says, wow, that's like a superpower. I wish I had that. So fast forward 10 years, we're in the 90s investigation, and this is right after Tom Purcell's listened to Julie's tape, that call-in the interrogation room. And the other officers and General Kent are saying that we pretty much have Tom, which they are always jumping the gun to put the blame on somebody.
Kent's immediately accusing Purcell. You could see he's just like disingenuous and just he's an asshole. But he's trying. I did read a little theory like he's definitely in on this whole thing, or at least being paid by somebody here to kind of cover it up.
Wow.
I don't know.
Okay.
I kind of bought into it. Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit on that quick, but Kent's obviously got some motives here. We knew that he was like trying to push himself to get the Attorney General position. Yeah. Attorney General.
I'm not one to defend a politician, but I think his only motive is to get answers so it doesn't make him look bad in office.
It's possible. We'll get into more of it, but he's immediately accusing Tom.
First, they said Kent wanted his guys to go in and like give him the hard ball because originally it was West and Hayes that went in there, and they said that they were too soft. And Roland said, let us take like one more crack at him," which is one of the first signs you see of Roland being soft around Tom.
Yeah. You saw it a few episodes back when you learned that he kind of saved him, pulled him out of that hole.
They're a little chummy, and I have something to say about that later, but
we'll see.
We'll see. He doesn't.
Anyway.
What?
So they start accusing him, and Hayes brings up the peephole, which Tom freaks out about. Obviously, he has no idea.
No idea what he's talking
He keeps turning to Roland. He's like, "How could you accuse me after everything we've been through?"
Yeah, after everything you think I would do this. And then Roland's like stone face.
Yeah, he's into his interrogation face that we've seen a few times. And there's a moment where
Tom's face changes, and it's kind of like, oh, so that's how we're gonna play this.
Yeah.
And he immediately switches from calling him Roland to Lieutenant West.
Mm-hmm. So after all that, which I'll say, it's obvious that he has nothing to do with this, and the fact that they're even, I mean, I guess they have to do their jobs and visit us, but they know that he has nothing to do with it. I know some people said he may have, but he's always been just
in this entire mess.
Yeah. So then they go to 2015 for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the documentary. Eliza brings up that phone call, saying it was a major turn.
Yeah, it seems like that phone call changed everything.
Yeah.
And it did, for a lot of it.
Yeah.
So it was only that brief thing, and Hayes kind of, in that interview, he doesn't. At first, he acts like he doesn't remember the phone call.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Yeah, it did."
Yeah, where he plays it pretty coy.
Yeah. So now we're back to the '90s investigation, and Wes says you didn't mention the backpack to General Kent or any of the other officers, which he was adamant about saying to like prove that Woodard wasn't the guy because they found the backpack unscathed, and it wouldn't have looked like that had it been there when the Woodard thing went down.
But right now, all that shows is that somebody planted it, so they could plant that on Tom, basically. Yeah. So he's like, I didn't want to give them that to use on him yet.
To use against Tom, yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, Hayes is back at the house, and Amelia mentions her new book and how she's writing a book on the current investigation in the 90s. And Hayes gets mad again. Every time she brings up this case, he gets angry that she's involved in any way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Literally any time she brings it up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I wonder if it's, I don't know if it's jealousy, if it's just he wants her to just worry about the kids in the house, or if he genuinely just doesn't want her getting wrapped up into this to protect her. Mm-hmm. I could see a little bit of all three.
Yeah. And I think it first stemmed with her getting more knowledge than he had on the case.
Yeah.
When she went to go see that officer and found out about the prince and everything.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time that she had more information than he did, and I think that pissed him off.
Yeah. So now I think, if I'm correct, they go back to Tom's old job at the body shop.
Tom's a big suspect. They're forced to go back and look through all of his crap and see where he was that day.
Yeah, they basically have to investigate him.
Again, yeah.
And so they talk to his boss, and the one thing he mentions that he was kind of on his way out of the job even before the whole thing happened.
Yeah.
He said he was drinking on the job. He didn't get along with the rest of the guys, and I guess he said they saw him going into a queer club, as he put it, and they always gave him shit for it.
Yeah.
So that's the first time you peek into that side of Tom.
Mm-hmm. Now,
go ahead.
This is the first time we disagree on a theory, really. I think that, and there's a lot of other people that think this, that Roland and Tom have a relationship. And there's a lot of things, especially in this episode, that play to that. Like, going back to the interrogation. He's like, after everything we've been through, what you know, how could you think that I do this? And he seems hurt when Roland is stone-faced, and that's when he's like, oh, okay, Lieutenant West. And he switches from calling him a personal name. And every time something happens, he looks to Roland and never Hayes. Like, when he beats up the car, they call Roland to come pick him up from that bar.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I just think they have a close friendship, which they alluded to. Like, Tom asked Roland to pray with him a few episodes back, and they did, and they close relationship. It's possible. I'm not gonna throw it out, but I don't know. I don't see it. And later on, when they're looking at his house, Roland finds a pamphlet saying it's like homosexuality can be cured. It says it's like a religious pamphlet or whatever. And the way he looks at it doesn't look like he.
Oh, see, I thought he looked hurt.
I guess you can interpret it however you want to interpret it. It's look. It's certain if it does come out that they came out.
You'll high five me.
Sure, I'll reluctantly give you a high five. I wouldn't be shocked, but we'll see.
Yeah.
They searched it. They found the pamphlet. Whatever. Now you going back to the 80s, right?
Yeah. One more thing. After they look at Tom's trailer, they're in the car, and I love these scenes are really good. You get a look at Hayes and West's relationship in these car scenes, and they're like back and forth banter. And Hayes is trying to think of different things that they found in the house, and he says, briefly mentions that maybe the Devil's Den was like a queer hangout, and the Purcell kids weren't supposed to be there, and that's why Tom took them or whatever. He's just making up theories, and Roland gets pissed, and he's like, no, that's not it. And he has like a moment of like a freak out. That's the first time you see him like kind of throw his professionalism out the window and like have some passion about something. Because it's been Hayes up to this point that's had these freakouts.
I wrote nothing about this scene, as you could probably tell from my silence.
Mm-hmm.
So, continue.
Okay. So now we're back in the 80s,
Yes.
and Hayes is in the office, and Kent and his men, including Detective Allen, come in, and they
Alan
hand
Jones.
him the photos of the backpack and Julie's burnt shirt. And
They're like, it was Woodward.
Yeah, to convict.
And Hayes right away is like, that's not it. There's more to it.
Yeah.
Kid says, stick to the evidence. Evidence suggests he burned the body.
Yeah.
She's
And
dead.
Hayes is like, this isn't solid evidence.
He's like, the evidence shows she's dead. Wrong. Idiot. Which we learned in the 90s.
Yeah.
But
and
can't stand him. So they just like
And
push
Alan says, well, this-
into this conviction.
to like close the case, and
Yeah.
he's like, this is good, the department will get a medal. And Hayes freaks out and he's like, I don't give a fuck about your medals.
Yeah.
And
You can see Alan Jones is kind of not as pushy as Kent is.
yeah, well,
And
Kent
obviously
is
10 years later he is pushing to overturn this conviction, so
yeah. And so Kent says, we have enough to convict him. He killed 10 people. And Hayes stands up and he says 12. And Kent goes, what? He's like, if you're going to put these kids on Woodard, it's 12. If you're going to tell a story, get your story straight. And he walks out, and I thought that was awesome.
yeah, he's great. You go to 2015, back to 2015, Eliza speaking to him. She shows him the remains
Again.
My notes
Eliza
are bad.
asks if
Go
Uncle
ahead.
Dan's remains is Tom's doing. Which, now just reading this back, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
That's foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And Hayes says he can't remember.
Or maybe they worked together, he and Woodard, Tom and Woodard, which definitely didn't happen.
No.
But
But
he's like, it's
this
terrible what
plays
this
into
work
the
makes
next time they go into the interview,
Just
which is
go.
like, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Not important. Go ahead. It wasn't an important line.
I said this plays into an interview they have later. That's all I said.
All right. Back to the 90s. Now we see Harris James, who Eliza actually showed a picture to Hayes of him, and he knew again, but he is
Said he
playing
didn't.
coy to Eliza. So he's a former highway patrol. He was one of the officers that processed the Woodard scene.
Yeah.
Now he's security at Hoyt Farms, and
He's like evading every question that they ask. Like Hayes says, why did it take 3 days to find the backpack in the canvas of Woodard's?
2 days.
3.
I have 2. Whatever.
Anyway,
Doesn't matter.
But he answers with like other questions like
Yeah.
well, or
They
like
they
other
mention his
things.
salary, like he's getting paid a lot to be security at Hoyt Farms, and so they kind of sense something, but he's not giving him anything.
Yeah, but Hayes implies that Harris is getting paid for other things than what he's doing at Hoyt Farms because of his large income.
Yeah.
And Harris gets, offended and tries to give it back to Hayes, and he's like, I miss driving around eating donuts all day.
He says he doesn't miss it. He said he doesn't miss doing that, and then Hayes is like, I don't eat donuts, and then Harris James is like, oh, well, I could tell. You got a nice bod. Like that. Just a little weird. Going back, so after that, you can tell this guy's a little off.
Yeah.
And we know that he disappeared after this 90s investigation, so something's about to happen with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Now back to 2015 in the interview, and she mentions Harris processing Woodard's crime scene during that time and how he disappeared during the 90s investigation. And Eliza very smugly goes, I wonder if they'll find his body in a quarry. Have you ever thought about the sheer numbers of people and bodies that are gone during this case?
Sheer number of fatalities in this case.
Yeah.
And she's kind of pushing it, and he...
alluding that
off.
she knows that Hayes has something to do with Harris's disappearance.
Yeah. This is when he's like, I need to stop again.
Mm-hmm. This episode, more than ever, is you question whether Hayes has a memory problem or not.
This was the first time I saw it. You mentioned it. And there was always a time where it was selective. I thought he was just kind of taking advantage of his condition and being selective with it. But there were definitely times where you could tell, like, it was just clearly he knows, but he's not saying anything. So now we're going back to the 90s. Amelia is continuing with her investigation, and she brings pictures of Julie to this, like, I don't know what you want to call it, like a girls.
It's like a convent rehab for girls.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's a church where all these girls, I guess, runaways are living.
Yeah.
And
nuns,
so Amelia's talking to this one girl who knew Julie. She said her name was Mary July, Mary Julie. She had different names. She talked about living in the pink rooms, which is the second person who's mentioned this. She said the queen of the pink castle. And I like this. She's like, I think she didn't know who she was. She just pretended.
Yeah.
Which, that whole phone call, really, I thought that right away. It's like the fact that they even looked into Tom off of that phone call, I didn't like.
Yeah.
You could tell, like, her mind wasn't right. She still thinks Will's alive. She's like, oh, we left him resting. So.
It goes back to when they said that 90s investigation did more harm than good.
Yeah.
It seems like they're too invested that, you know, when they say you're so close to something that you're missing things. And I think that's what's happening with this 90s investigation, that they're like following a lead that's might not actually be a lead.
Yeah. And this girl says another big thing. She's like, you want to write a book, write about what happens to girls out here.
Yeah.
And now this is the first time you get a idea that something bigger is going on in this town.
Yeah. And then Wes gets a call that somebody wants to meet him, says he knows him, and then you see Hayes and Wes walk into a diner, and there's Uncle Dan in the 90s.
He looks even more of a dirtbag now in the 90s.
Yeah. Long hair, like greased out. He looks high strung, like he hasn't, like he's going through withdrawals almost.
Yeah, clearly. So they meet him in this diner, and he right away, like, throwing riddles and shit out. And speaking in rhymes. And, I mean, you know, he's saying that he has info, which he does. But he wants $7,000 for the info.
Yeah.
And Hayes is like, you're working on getting your head bounced off the curb. I love the lines that they throw out there. But he tells them that he actually lived with Julie growing up.
With Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy.
The mom,
sorry,
Lucy.
Yeah, and he says
this
that
one disgusting line.
Yeah, like, we shared a lot of milestones growing up,
which only further makes me feel like Julie's actually Dan's daughter.
Yeah, I think it definitely is.
Yeah.
But the question was always, is Dan the one that took her and, you know, was molesting her or whatever?
Yeah.
And it's becoming clear that he wasn't.
Yeah, and Dan says that you're crazy if you think you're the only people looking for Julie, which is what Hayes said, why he didn't want to put an APB out for Julie, because it might tip somebody off.
Yeah. And they bring up Tom, and he, like, laughs. He's like, you guys are that far off, huh?
Yeah.
So, like, the fact that they're investigating Tom is a joke to Dan. Yeah. Which, again, was what I said. Like, he had nothing to do with it. But now, you know, they have a little back and forth. And now you go back to the jail cell, right?
And Tom's released. This is another thing. As soon as Tom's released, he asks for Roland.
Yeah.
He says, where's Roland? He says, I don't know. The cop says, I don't know. So before Tom leaves the precinct, he, like, sneaks outside of one of the...
Well, he's going to see Roland, too. He's not in his office, obviously. And then he hears these cops, the cops that are working with Hayes and West, and they're talking about Uncle Dan, who they just called, Hayes and West just called these cops back from Uncle
said
Dan.
that they saw him and had to sit down at the diner with him. So Tom hears this, and then he basically books out of the precinct. So you're like, oh shit, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Oh, another thing Dan said is he made it seem like Lucy's overdose was not an accident.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's relevant information or... Okay, so now we're at the press concert. The press conference.
Kint's basically announcing the Woodard conviction. We're back in the 80s here.
Yeah.
Tom, like, tries to hold Lucy's hand. She pulls away.
She's like, don't touch my bitch.
Yeah. And then she storms. Well, they both storm off. A reporter's, like, chasing her out.
And Amelia's
chasing her out.
And then says sorry, and Lucy's basically says fuck you.
Yeah, she says you two bitches talk to each other and make up a story on your own.
Yeah.
So, but whatever. It just nothing crazy.
It was a
there.
scene.
It was. So back to the 90s now. This is after they speak with Dan, and Wes is like, it'd be ironic if that shitbird clears Tom.
Yeah.
And then you smacked your microphone.
It's gonna be real loud.
So this is when Hayes and Wes get into an argument in the car.
Yep.
They're like, Roland's taking Hayes home, and he just does not want to go home. He wants to keep going. So I think you took a little more info from the scene.
Yeah. Yeah, he wants to keep going, and Roland's like, give it a rest. Like, we need time to look over things. Basically saying that Hayes is too into this. And he's like, don't use this case as an excuse not to go home.
Yeah.
And then Hayes gets out and walks, and he ends up walking to that cross-section of Shoepick and Briarwood, which is the Purcell house. So I was wrong earlier. Well, something
I
happened.
told you it was. I told you it was the Purcell house.
Yeah, in 2015, that house is gone. Gone.
He gone.
So Hayes walks to Shoepick Briarwood Purcell house and goes in.
Yeah. Well, but before this, Tom finds Dan at the hotel, right?
Oh, boobies. Yep.
Boobies. Yeah, so now you see Dan at this motel, a little inn, and Tom finds him. I think he says that he knew he'd find him here. He always used to hold tricks here or something. I don't know if he said tricks or sell drugs or something, but
yeah,
he had an inkling he was going to be there, and he was.
Tom's a little...
Yeah, Tom's been hitting the bottle. And Dan alludes to Tom being homosexual. It's like, there's a rest stop down the road. I saw a glory hole in the back alley if you need something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, laughs him off. But Tom follows him basically right as Dan opens the door to his hotel room. Tom pushes him in, pulls a gun on him.
Yeah, they have a little scuffle. They fight pretty hard. And then Tom finally gets on top of Dan with the gun and says, what did you do with Julie? He mentions the peephole to Uncle Dan, and Dan's like, what the hell are you talking about? He has no idea.
This was because I really thought that, like, Dan was peeping or whatever.
Yeah.
But his reaction, it was pretty clear.
Yeah, he was like
offended, and like,
yeah.
It's like, I would never. He started to say she's, like, I would never, she's mine, or like something like that. Yeah. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
And then Tom like cuts him off. So yeah, now we don't see Tom, like, looks like he's gonna do something. We don't know if Tom's the one who killed him. If he kills him right there. We know that
Dan's dead and that his remains were found in. We don't know. We know to the 2015 interview.
Yeah.
But we don't know who killed him. It looks like Tom's gonna kill him, but they don't show him killing him. They just show him beat him up.
I don't know if it's just him. If it happens right there, we'll find out.
So now it goes back to what I was saying. Hayes walks into the Purcell house, and the house is like condemned at this point. You see, like, teenagers have been there. There's graffiti on the walls and stuff like that. He's just kind of looking around, and
he finds the people.
He finds the peephole, and he's just looking through, and he's thinking about it, and then he takes a note and rolls it up and sticks it through the hole, and he realizes, Jax,
shut up. Well, you got something to say?
You have something to say about the peepholes?
Huh? Quiet down.
Hot down. Hayes figures out that Julie and Will were passing notes back and forth to each other through that hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And which goes back to, it's either episode 2 or 3 where they found all those ripped up notes.
Yeah.
Hayes was like trying to figure out what they were.
Yeah. So he tells him, and now you're back to 2015. Hayes and Wes are sitting in Hayes' house in his room where he's been doing all that investigating, and he talks about the notes.
This is a big scene for whether Hayes is truly losing his memory or not.
Yeah.
But he remembers the notes, and he tells Roland, and Roland's like, "Yep, that's right." So they clearly knew this and went over this in the past. This isn't new information to Roland. So then Hayes gets up to go to the bathroom, and Roland gets up and finds Amelia's book and finds. I keep hitting this mic. And
the book's got like a million notes.
Notes.
Sticky notes
Yeah.
and stuff.
Which Hayes never touched Amelia's book in the past, and now he's finding all this information that she has in this book. Now in 2015, Jackson, Mississippi. What are you doing?
Stop whining. Big old boy. Big old boy.
So
Hayes goes to the bathroom, and Wes is looking through the book. He finds the book there, and then he comes back, and all of a sudden he acts surprised
he's
to
like,
see Roland.
Roland, how you been, bud?
Yeah.
But I think it's an act. And so he asks Roland to look out the window. He's like, do me a favor, look out the window. Is there a car out there? And Roland looks through the hole, but the camera never shows. Every time Hayes looks out the window, the camera shows out the window and you see the car.
Yeah.
But this time you just see Roland look through the blinds.
Yeah.
And they don't show out there, and Roland says, no, there's no car out there.
Yeah. So there could have been a car. Or you say there is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
All right. And then he acts like, he's like, oh, it's 2015, isn't it? I don't know. I think
he's playing it so hard.
I think he's got something going on, but he's playing it up too. I don't know. But now, after that, we go back to the 90s. You're at Amelia's book release.
Yeah.
And she's just holding a press conference or whatever.
This is for her first book.
Yes.
So this was on the 80s investigation, not the 90s. Even though you're in.
I had 90s.
No, it is in the 90s, but the book release is for her book on the 80s investigation.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
that's what I was gonna say because I knew she didn't write the book in the 80s.
No.
So now, all of a sudden, this a black man with a dead eye comes,
which they
up and
mentioned in
starts
previous
asking
episodes.
questions. But this is not the guy that they had confronted.
No, but the guy
Hayes
that they
was
confronted said, "You know how many guys there are like me with a dead eye."
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So the guy talks. He's like, "What do you know about this? Do you even know anything?" And she's like, "No, this is just what I knew at the time of the 80s investigation." He's like hounding her. And he's like, "So really, you don't know anything?"
Yeah. They're just making your money and milking their fame.
And she's like flabbergasted because he's like accosting her in front of all these people at her book release. And as he's walking out, she goes, "Dolls," because she remembers that
herself the dolls.
She remembers that the black man with the dead eye bought 10 of those. What are they?
The dolls.
Chaff dolls.
Not chaff.
Chow dolls.
Dolls. Why is it dolls?
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the guy.
Yeah.
But we don't know where he fits in there. Is he the guy with the brown sedan?
We don't know. We have no idea who this guy is. All right. Big scene. We're back in the 90s.
And Tom drunk. We don't see Dan, so we don't know what happened there.
But we assume it's right after he visited Dan.
Yeah. And he drives by White Mansion. And drunk Tom Purcell breaks right in. And then you see somebody watching on camera.
The security guard.
Right away, it's Harris James.
Yeah, you can tell it's Harris James.
Yeah. So now he's walking around, and he finds this, like, cellar in the basement. And
cellars are usually in the basement.
What would you call it? It's a hidden hole.
Yeah, a tunnel.
A hidden tunnel down in the cellar.
Yeah.
So he opens the door. He walks through there, opens the door, and all of a sudden you see right away pink walls. And you're like, oh shit, pink room.
That's the pink room that Julie was talking about.
Yeah. So this is a huge reveal here. And then Tom walks in and he's looking at something on the wall.
Yeah.
Says, what the hell? Julie? And Harris walks in behind him and
fade to black like the Sopranos, bitch.
Yeah, they've been doing that a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot of cliffhangers.
Leaving you hanging.
Yeah, but it's good because I can't wait for episode 7. And there's only 2 more episodes.
Which... Some people are like, "Oh, he's looking at Julie." No, Julie's not in that freaking room. Get out of here.
No, people are stupid.
People are stupid.
but probably there's pictures on the wall or something.
Maybe
weird's
something
going
like
on.
that.
But this was big. So one of the things that I read with Hoyt Farms is this is kind of showing that there's this big conspiracy in town, and Hoyt's paying people off to keep quiet.
Yeah.
But it's either him or one of his family
seems
members.
Like this mansion, and seems like Hoyt Farms, the business, is a cover for maybe some trafficking.
Yeah.
Ring.
Yeah.
Because that goes back to what that girl, Julie's roommate, said. What's happening to girls
around here? So clearly, it's not just Julie. I don't know if there's been a string of missing girls or, because they don't really allude to that in the town. This was the first
missing
time.
Yeah.
But
we also have never seen Mr. Hoyt.
No.
We don't know who he is.
No. So, I don't know how to feel about him. Clearly, he's not a good person. It's got something to do with this.
And now we know. Now we know Harris James' other job and why he's being paid so much money.
Yeah.
He's security for Hoyt Mansion.
Yeah.
And it was like that hallway that he went down, like maximum security doors. Like they weren't. It was not cheap.
Yeah. No.
Like he had her in there.
It's a mansion.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are you excited about for the next episode?
I don't know. There's only 2 episodes left, so they got to tie in a lot of things.
I really want to know. I mean, obviously, we're going to find out what happens now in 2015, and if they do find somebody. But they still have a lot to wrap up.
Yeah.
This part in the 80s, and I mean,
I still think Tom and Roland have a relationship. 90s. I still think that Roland and Hayes. I think Tom killed Uncle Dan. And I think because of Roland's relationship with Tom, Hayes and Roland help him cover it up. That's what I think.
At this point, are we done with the 80s? Woodard's convicted, and that's that, right?
That's it. That's what we know happened. They
didn't go back to the 80s really at all. It was just after that, Kent announcing the conviction, they didn't go back. And they only went to it like twice.
It would only be maybe to look at something. Yeah. Look at Amelia's relationship.
A little bit of fallout, yeah. But I'm happy because there was a lot less jumping around in this one. So,
anyway, thanks for watching.
Stay tuned guys.
For episode 7. Like we said, there's only 2 more episodes left, so things are gonna get real crazy. If you don't think they haven't already, maybe you should stop watching TV because I think it's nuts.
Yeah. What are you looking at?
The finale is during the Oscars.
Fuck. We gotta watch this. All right, we'll watch the Oscars and then we'll watch this after.
But the Oscars go to like 1 in the morning.
Or the next day.
We're so old.
Yeah. But
all right,
we have to catch up. We're supposed to be watching movies for the Oscars. We have not done that. We got like you just went right to the lens of your glasses. Liar! This guy's a phony.
Listen, I have no makeup on, so I have to do something to cover some of my face.
Me too.
Yeah. He's so ugly.
That's why I wear these headphones. Just mask it.
Alright, well, thanks for watching. And
thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.